So I just feel like playing today. Ebony's in my lap. Ebony's the cat that you see behind me over there, over my other shoulder. Many of these movies, in fact, most of them, I think almost all of them. Ebony's around because Ebony's always around. But she's not up on the sofa right now. She's on my lap. She's in my hands. And I am indulging her. Ebony's dying. Maybe not right away, but soon enough. If she were a dog, I'd say she's within days, but cats die different from dogs, so she could be around here for a couple of months more, but she just looks like a rickety old lady more and more and more every day. And she's a very needy cat to begin with. Her being on my lap is kind of a big deal, or it would have been in the past, just because Ebony will jump on my lap 6 times in a row, and I will throw her off my lap 6 times in a row, and as soon as I'm distracted, there she is for time number 7. I think mammalian moral philosophy in general comes down to you never can tell, but in terms of pursuing attention from me in particular, but pursuing attention from people generally, Ebony's always driven her ratiocination by the lodestone of you never can tell. Very, very needy girl. If she were a woman, she would have been the perpetually single, perpetually dateless. She would have been a cat lady, a true cat lady, right down to the Haagen-Dazs, and maybe with the 47-inch waistline too. She's a skinny girl. She's skinny and beautiful. She's beautiful like Audrey Hepburn. That's the movie star we always compared her to, was Audrey Hepburn, and she ages like Audrey Hepburn too, who was a delicate old bird at the end. But I'm indulging Ebony because she's dying, and I'm giving her more than I might otherwise have given her in the past, because I know soon enough there won't be any Ebony left to try to take from me, or to be given to by me, or to be giving me, even despite myself, the love that she's always shared for me, and I've always kind of sort of rejected, at least when I was busy. The only time I really noticed that I'm rejecting Ebony is when I'm busy. When I'm not busy, Ebony's with me, on top of me, on my belly, on my chest, with her claws kneading ever closer toward my throat. I've always laughed that she's trying to murder me. I don't think she is, but it just seems that way. One of her favorite places to be is on top of my shoulder, like a pirate's parrot. And so ride around, I can walk around with Ebony on my shoulder. She can surf and maintain her balance, maintain her stability, maintain her position, and surf around on my shoulder. It doesn't matter how fast I move or what strange lateral motions I put in on her. She surfs really, really well. This is empathy. Duh. This is empathy both ways. Me describing Ebony as if she were a pathetic single woman, and Ebony surfing my body as if I were a surfboard. This is empathy both ways. And I think this is wonderful. This is visibility for Ebony. And Ebony is not invisible. To the contrary, she's too much visible. And because she's too much visible, she's always trying to draw that attention that she craves so much. And in her obsessive need to be visible to me and to other people, she ends up essentially pulling a sort of cloak of invisibility around herself. She's not truly invisible. To the contrary, we deliberately ignore her. We deliberately deny her visibility in order not to be put upon by it. I talked about this with respect to empathy for the untouchable in 9 Empathies. That what we do with untouchables, how do you know who's untouchable? The untouchable is the one you're pretending not to see. Easy to measure. If you do that, I don't. I do the opposite. Not because of the opposite game, but because I don't really care for pretending that facts don't exist. I think that pretending that facts don't exist is the well-trod path to ever greater error, and so I don't do it. It's a very simple thing that you can do to avoid leading yourself into willful self-deception, to avoid leading yourself into error. One of the key things that you can do to avoid doing that is stop ignoring facts. That every fact around you, everything that is apprehensible to your senses is true, is real, is existential, is undeniable. Stop trying to deny those things. Stop trying to pretend they don't exist. Stop trying to ignore factual reality. Instead, embrace it for what it is, and then respond accordingly. Respond as you choose to respond, but make an informed choice based on an actual awareness of the facts of reality rather than trying to dismiss or deny them. In any case, for most people, if you're looking to figure out who it is who's the untouchable, figure out who it is that you're trying to ignore, who it is that you're trying to neglect, whose needs you're actively trying to avoid having any responsibility for. And this is what we do with Ebony, me worse than anyone, because I am her prey. I am, for whatever reason, whatever it is, whatever emotional need, now she's off, she's gone. She's much like my mother in that regard, very intense, very short encounters. It's one of the things I could admire about her is that, yes, she's desperately needy, and yes, she will jump on my lap 7 times in a row until she gets to stay. But once she gets to stay, she doesn't stay very long, and then she goes off and does her deal, and then maybe she comes back for more, or maybe she comes back and hops on the sofa behind me. She needs me in particular. She needs me. She will settle for others. My daughter Meredith is the one, I think, who cultivated this neediness in her. I'm sure that the neediness pre-existed Meredith's involvement, but Ebony was less willing to risk the rejection, I guess. And Meredith is the one who taught her that it's worth the successful salesman closes 5 to 6 times. That's if you take sales training, that's what you'll be told. I don't know. Like, to the extent that I've been successful as a salesperson, I've never felt like I was closing at all. And to the extent that I felt like I was closing, success comes and goes. But sales trainers will tell you that a successful salesperson closes 5 or 6 times before getting the money, before completing the sale. And there's Ebony closing 6 times, 7 times, 8 times, as many times as necessary to get her needs met. She defies the pretended invisibility that she gets by making herself an untouchable. She defies that by continuing to pursue her values until she attains them. That's admirable. That's really admirable. And this is me, I don't know if she's sneezing. This is me admiring Ebony's indefatigable virtue from her own point of view, not from mine. It seems like an annoyance to me, or it has until lately when I've deliberately tickled my sociable bone in order to be more rewarding to Ebony, to give her more as she shuffles off this mortal coil. But it's fun for me to see her virtues for what they are and to cite them, to note them. I'm doing that. I'm writing a book. I'm writing a children's story. I'm writing a short story, novelette, short novel, maybe 15,000 words, which means it'll end up being 18 or 20 by the time I'm done. But think of it in terms of 10, 15,000 words aimed at children 3 to 5 is my guess, to be read as a bedtime story by adults. I'm writing a bedtime story. This is so funny. I have mentioned in recent weeks that I've been thinking about writing for children because I feel like I can achieve better results, better persuasive results by getting to people before they already think they know everything. And the stories that I was thinking about in that regard, I still thinking about, but not doing anything about, involved teenagers, 10, 12, up to say 14 years old. I'm really interested in. I might follow them through high school. I'm interested in this cadre of teenagers. I'm going to end up writing 30, maybe 50 kids along with their associated adults. This is a big, daunting task. I don't like big jobs. I like jobs that I can knock out in a day or 2 days or a week or 2 weeks or 2 months. And I'd start writing these stories, I could end up writing them over the next 20 years. And yet I had this other idea. I've had this idea for a long, long time, and I started playing with it this week, and I ended up writing out of it. Taking 4 of the dogs that we had in the aughts, in the first decade of the new millennium, the 2000s, I guess is the way you would say it. 4 dogs that were living with us then. I really liked them, and I liked their dynamic, and I really liked their personalities. And you can tell that I pay a whole lot of attention to the pets who live with us. And I pay attention to them as if they were people. They can't think, they can't reason, they can't apprehend facts by means of abstract notation systems. They can't communicate in abstract notation systems. They have no father tongue. They have no free will, but they definitely have will. They have will, and if you don't believe me, put a bloodhound on a lead and expose him to a rabbit and see what happens to you. You'll either lose that lead or you will lose the skin on your knees. But the rabbit will be pursued because the bloodhound has will. He just doesn't have free will. He doesn't have informed discretion. But I react to animals as if they were people, as if they were babies. Essentially are babies. They can't reason, they can't choose, but they're mammals in every other respect. And they have the same disc predispositions that we can see in human beings. They don't have anywhere near as much reptile as we do because they can't. Mammals are going to be sociable. It's in the nature of being a mammal. We're the only mammal who can effectively eviscerate sociability in cautious personalities in particular, but also in incandescent and driven personalities if they indulge the monster enough, indulge the reptile enough. They can seemingly eviscerate sociability from their behavior. Mammals really can't do that. Mammals are always going to be sociable because they can't remember pain, for one thing. They can't remember pain comprehensively, which is what makes for the reptilian motivations in human beings is the memory of past pain and the anticipation of future pain, which is what the cautious are good at, is anticipating future pain. Mammals can't do that comprehensively, and so it takes a whole lot of pain to eviscerate the sociability out of a mammal. But these 4 dogs were fun for me. Odysseus, the bloodhound, we built our business around him. Shyly, half black lab, half black chow. She was black. She was a black dog. Very fun. All Labrador in her personality. I've written about her so many times. I wrote an essay years ago called Shyly's Delight about manifesting the secondary consequences of splendor. The whole idea of splendor I owe to Shyly. I mean, I live it from the inside out. I always have this indomitable exuberance that drives me in particular, that makes me what I am. I've had it since I was 4 years old. Since I woke up, I've always lived this way. But it was Shyly who taught me how to appreciate it for what it is, and it was because of studying Shyly that I came up with the name Splendor, because I wanted something more than joy or jubilation or happiness or serenity or all the other names that we could give to a desired state of mind, a state of mind that is worthy of being pursued, avidly pursued. There are all kinds of names we could give to that, but I wanted something that explained it all comprehensively. I saw it in Shyly, and I gave it that name, Splendor. I wrote an essay called Shyly's Delight years ago. Obviously, I wrote a book just last year called Shyly's Delight. How to play, work, and love like a Labrador. It's about pursuing life on the sociable and driven axis of the disc profile, to be driven in your sociable pursuits and to be sociable in your driven pursuits, but to live on that DS axis to gain strength where you're weak, but to gain strength on those 2 parts of the axis no matter where you fall in predisposition in disc, to become more driven and more sociable, but especially more sociable about your driven pursuits. This is what Shyly was. She was always playing. She was a busy dog, always into everything, always working, but always having fun, always playing. It was always just play for her. And it was play because she was playing with her family. She was playing with her pack. And this is what makes for a happy human life, is pursuing your values, yes, but pursuing your values with the people that you love. Pursuing your values as the expression of your love for those people and for the things that you're building together. This is where human happiness comes from. This is what splendor really is for an adult human being, is pursuing your values with the people that you love and pursuing your loves as the foremost values in your life, as the top of your value hierarchy. Your spouse, your children, your extended family, your friends, and only then the things that you pursue outside the house. The values that you pursue inside the house, in your family, are the ones that will matter most to you in the end. And so I have been playing, I can't even think, it must be 12 years, 13 years, that I've been thinking about these four dogs and writing stories about these four dogs and their adventures out in the world, which means personifying them, anthropomorphization, to anthropomorphize them, to give them human-like characteristics, even though, of course, dogs don't have these characteristics. And I rebel against that as a matter of praxis because I don't work that way. You hear me cheering earlier, 10 minutes ago, about embracing existential reality. I do not reject existential reality. I don't like art that does. I don't have anything to do with fantasy, for instance. And I stopped reading science fiction quite a long time ago, and I don't care for anything of mystery or supernatural influence or ghosts or vampires or any of that crap, any of the crap that people have come up with in order to sustain their lifelong terror of being alive. I hate all of that. I hate everything of unreality in art, and the reason that I hate it is because it's anti-reality. And the anti-reality that it's most anti is anti-egoism. It's anti-realistic art is anti-egoistic art. It's anti-efficacy, anti-agency, anti-independence, anti-sovereignty. It's anti-splendor. Not for me. But there is one kind of personified art that works for me and works for everyone, and that's children's books, children's movies, children's stories. And that was, I guess, the big epiphany for me, was realizing that as much as I wanted to write these stories, the only way I could write them is as children's stories, and that's appropriate because it's the reason that children like animals in stories is because they don't feel all that visible to their parents. This is for real. They don't feel visible to their parents because their parents really don't understand them. They don't understand that they're mammals for a long time before they're people. And the children don't really understand their parents all that well, that their parents are apprehensible to their vision, but they're not thoroughly visible because they really don't get what's going on. Until you wake up in father tongue, you have no idea what's really going on around you. This is a great big epiphany for children. It's going to be shocking to them. Maybe most of them suppress the memory of waking up because it's such a great big trauma. It's such a great big shock. But until you wake up in father tongue, you really don't know what's going on around you in father tongue, and in consequence, parents can't really see their young children, and young children really can't see their parents. And when young children read about animals, they can identify more closely with those animals than they do with the people in the stories. For real. True. I like that. I think that's cool. I mean, I understand what's going on in the development of human consciousness and waking up, the process of waking up. Yes, it is a gradual process, but there is an epiphanic moment where, the scales actually do fall from your eyes and suddenly you see the world as if for the first time. And I understand what it looks like when you're peering through a glass darkly and not quite seeing all that, knowing that there's something there and not knowing quite what you're seeing. And this is the way the world looks to your dog. This is the way the world looks to your cat. That everything that your dog understands, he understands better than you. Way better. But everything that your dog doesn't understand, he doesn't understand at all. I wrote about this in Sun City, particularly writing about Naso, the dog who was the star of Sun City, writing about her as if she were the little mermaid, walking on knives in order to live among people. And this is the way it is for all dogs. This is the way it is for all cats. This is the way it is for pets, for domesticated animals in general, for horses, desperately trying to please their people and never quite understanding what it is that's expected of them and how to get it right, how to get it perfect, how to win that approval, how to win that space on my lap when you've been thrown off 6 times in a row, like Ebony. So, I've been empathizing with these dogs all week. I had tremendous empathy for them while they were alive. I really understood them. I really understood their minds, and they taught me so much. If you read what I wrote in those years, I learned so much from studying those 4 dogs in particular, studying their unique personalities, but also being aware of their differences, what Desdemona, for instance, could learn that Ophelia never could learn. Interesting. Measurable differences in the pattern matching ability, the inferential skill of particular dogs. but really their personalities and what drove them. And now I see better than I did then, the disc presuppositions that drove them, the disc personality types in each one of these dogs, easily discernible, easily distinguishable. I have a little chart at my desk, a little index card that I wrote. It's the minivan of these 4 dogs, where they sit. Odysseus in the driver's seat, Shyly in the passenger seat. She's riding shotgun. In the back on the left is Ophelia. In the back on the right is Desdemona. That's the way they would situate themselves if they were a family in a minivan. And there's Odysseus, driven sociable, Shyly sociable driven. This makes for a real good family leadership team, and that's where they are. They're the family leadership team. In the back, there's Ophelia, sociable incandescent, and there's Desdemona on the right, who is a cautious incandescent. And I said that all mammals must be sociable, and yet when a mammal sees enough of the monster comes to predominate. And this really was the case with Desdemona, that she was a cautious incandescent, or an incandescent cautious. She was almost never sociable, certainly never sociable with other dogs, never sociable with other dogs. Tolerant, a pack member, because dogs can't not be a pack member, but not a willing, grateful pack member. She was a sullen and resentful teenager the whole time we had her. And not very sociable with people either. She licked me one time. I can remember one time that she licked my hand. The entire time we had her, and she loved me. I was her person. I was Shyly's person. I was Odysseus's person. Ophelia glommed onto Kathy, but would glom onto anybody. But those 3 dogs, they were my dogs. And not my dogs because I wanted them to be my dogs. I don't get a choice in this matter. I was their dog. I was their person. They were my dogs because I was their person, that they had chosen me. We actually tried to adopt Desdemona out at one point, and she would not bond with the new person, and he brought her back to us, and she immediately scampered over to me. The only other time that I ever saw her express any sort of affection for any person was her scampering over to me, grateful to be back under my thumb. And I guess that really was the relationship for her, because she wasn't seeking any kind of reciprocal affectionate arrangement, not at all. But she needed me to be her person. She needed me to be her boss, to be her alpha. But in writing about these dogs, I'm learning so much more about them, because I have to see the world their way. I mean, I saw how they saw the world before, and I could understand and appreciate it. They were visible to me. But they're much more visible to me now, because I have to think about their world from the inside. I have to see the world from the inside and interpret it as if they were kind of sort of human and still dogs. And that's fun too, to think about how to personify a dog and still have a dog instead of just a fake person with a funny accent, which is what happens when you see cartoons. But it's been a real education in visibility for me. I have been playing visibility games for the past year intently. I've been playing visibility games all my life. But I didn't know to give them that name until a year ago, and I only knew to give them that name because of the idea of empathy games, which I didn't have that term before I wrote 9 Empathies. But I've been playing these visibility games for the last year as consistently as I can, as often as I can. And what that means is taking account of somebody and seeing the person that he's always wanted the world to see. Seeing the person that he wishes that everyone else could see, and they never seem to. They never seem to see that person. They're always responding to someone who isn't there. They're always responding to nothing, if they even notice him at all, or her at all. And so I've been responding to people that way. I mean, everybody. I met a severely developmentally disabled woman. She's not a child. She comports herself much like a child, but she's in her 40s. And you could say, oh my goodness, what a tragic life. But tragic, benevolent, comic, none of that means anything, because it's her life. It's the only life she has. She doesn't have an alternative that she can choose to live instead. And she probably, possibly, plausibly doesn't spend too much time dwelling on what she's missing, but even if she did, even if she could, it really wouldn't do her any good. It wouldn't make any difference, because there's an upper limit to how much she can do. But that upper limit is much higher than anyone else sees, because they're used to seeing her as an object of need, an object of attention, an object of care, something that absorbs attention and affection but doesn't really give any back. And that's not so. This lady is a human being. She really is a human being in there. And I proved it with her with guile. She will attempt to trick people. She's not subtle, and she's not subtle, and she's not scheming, and she's not elaborate in her games. But she plays little hide and seek games with people. She hides things from people in order to trick them, and that's guile. And it's exactly the sort of guile that you will never see in any sort of an animal. When you raise issues like this, people will say, oh, well, this animal does this, it's camouflage, or this animal does that, it's hiding from its prey. But actual guile is one step beyond that, because it involves a projection into the future, a subjunctive projection into the future. It involves the recognition that the guileful act, whatever it is, will be surprising, ideally amusing, but at least surprising to the other party, to the party that you're trying to trick. Tricking people is Loki's love. We've talked about this before. This is the love of Loki, is tricking people, paying attention to people by causing them minor pain in the pursuit of amusement, as a way of saying, I'm aware of you, I'm paying attention to you, I'm thinking about you, I love you. I caused you a little pain in order to show you that I'm thinking about you, that you're in my thoughts. That's Loki's love. And this woman can do that, and because she can do that, I know she's human. And taking account of that, I was able to play with her right back. And it may have been the first time, I don't know, I hope not, God, I hope not, it may have been the first time that anybody ever tried to play with her. In much the same way that I would play with a kitten. And really the games work the same way, that the kitten is a little bit wary and a little bit shy, but is willing to take a small risk at least to see what happens, and you respond with a small overture, not a big one, because you'll scare that kitten away. And the kitten's response is just a little bit bigger, and your response is just a little bit bigger, and this is a feedback loop. You're amplifying a mutually reciprocal feedback loop. This is the mutually reciprocal empathetic love of mammals being expressed in little, tiny, tiny, tiny little games, tiny little overtures, tiny little responses, that each one gets bigger with each iteration of the game until you're playing tricks on each other. You're tricking each other, and you're laughing, and you're having the time of your life. And it's no different for me if I'm doing that with a dog, or with a woman like this, or with my wife Kathleen. It's the same kind of play. It may involve different tokens and different symbols, but it's the same kind of play. And it's really visibility play. That's what it is. I see you, I know what you like, I know what you don't like, and I know how to trick you. And when I trick you, I'm going to laugh. And you're going to laugh too. And we're going to love each other more, because we paid attention to each other in this way. We were visible to each other in this way. And so these stories are fun for me. This story, there's only one so far, but not even finished. But it's fun for me because the dogs are so much more visible to me. But it's fun for me too because that relationship that Odysseus and Shiley had was very parental, was very family management oriented, and it was very much like my marriage, where I am a whole lot like Odysseus and Kathleen is a whole lot like Shiley. And of course, as she's reading this, she gets to read everything first that I write. As she's reading this, she's seeing that. I'm playing with her anyway. I'm teasing her by pointing out this relationship to her, which is fun for her also. It's a unique reading of this story. No one else will have this experience. Only Kathleen can have this experience because only Kathleen knows how much of our marriage is mirrored in this relationship between Odysseus and Shiley. But there's more for me, really for me alone, because it's Loki and Sigyn too. Now, I very much identify with Loki. It's why I talk about him all the time. And one of the reasons that I identify so much with Loki is because Kathleen seems so much like Sigyn to me. She is my Sigyn. She makes me believe in God. I don't believe in God. But she makes me believe in God. She makes me believe in the Norse gods in any case by building Sigyn for me. But she makes me believe that maybe the Norse gods are aliens from Asgard or something like that, because I think she's so perfect that she must have been specifically designed and manufactured just for me. She is not just Sigyn, she is Sigyn perfected, the ultimate Sigyn. And she induces me to rise to be the ultimate Loki. In this way, am avidly desirous of being more visible to her. I wrote this on Facebook this week. If you choose admirably, you will be visible to admirable people. I'm not visible to anybody, almost nobody, but the people who do see me are seeing the real me, and they're seeing everything I have to give, everything that I love in this world, and everything that I want to see more of. I want to make my values more visible. This is one way I go about doing it. I'm so glad to have you with me at the Church of Splendor, and I entreat you to come back again next week. Bless you. Thank you. Bye-bye.